Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure you check in the description below where you'll find a link to all of my social media shenanigans, including where to find my patterns, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, and how to support me on Patreon. Today, I have a subject, you would have seen it in the title, and what this is it's talking about making knits or knitting, and this could include all other kinds of crafting actually, for other people. And you saw I'm calling the video Saying No and Letting Go. And it's really two separate parts. I want to talk about and help you and support you if your choice is to say no when someone asks you to knit for them. And then the other part is letting go, is when you do decide to knit something for someone, how to let go of your personal investment in it, just in case things don't go over as well as you had hoped. It's possible. So first, no. It's a complete sentence. No, period. Could you knit me some socks? No. Would you knit me a shawl? No. I saw this super cute mermaid blanket on Pinterest. Can you knit that for me? A, that's crochet. B, no. No is okay. We all knit for different reasons. And if part of what brings you joy in knitting is knitting for other people, then that is fantastic. But if you consider knitting to be a very personal thing, if you do it to make things for yourself, it's okay to be what is called a selfish knitter. I actually belong to a Ravelry group that I joined very early on called Selfish Knitters and Crocheters. And what it's about is it's okay. This is your personal time. This is what you do for your enjoyment in life. And it's okay if the only person you want to knit for is yourself. You are under zero obligation to knit or crochet or embroider or sew or do any sort of crafting for someone else. And frankly, don't let anyone tell you differently, because you're not obligated. If you choose to do it, that is a completely different situation. But if you want to say no, just say no. And if the person who has requested that you knit for them doesn't respect you saying no, I have a few ideas on how you can make it clear to them precisely what they're asking for. Because frequently you'll be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they'll be like, oh, but I'll pay you for I'll pay the yarn. I'll buy the materials. You won't have to spend any money. And they don't understand that that's not necessarily what it's about. I mean, of course, yes, my assumption would be, yes, you are going to pay for the yarn and all the materials if I'm going to knit something for you. But you also need to be compensated for your time. And people don't understand exactly how much time it takes to knit some things. And they are not entitled to your time. So one thing is if they're like, oh yeah, you really need to knit this thing for me, because I found that's how they phrase it. They're not like, hey, will you knit this for me? It's like, you need to knit this for me. And I'm like, no, I don't need to do that. But what you can say is estimate. Say they're asking you to knit a pair of socks. And let's say it takes you 15 hours to knit a pair of socks. I don't know how long it takes you to knit a pair of socks, but you might have a vague idea. So estimate. So you've got 15 hours. Okay, just at, let's say $8 an hour. So I'm going to pull up my little calculator here. $8 an hour times 15 hours. That's, oh, wait a minute, that math can't be right. 8 times 15. There you go. That's $120. So say, okay, well, it's going to take me about 15 hours to knit that, and I need to at least make minimum wage. That's $120 in addition to the materials. Still, they have to buy the $25 skein of yarn that you're going to knit with. Or if you don't feel comfortable talking about money, you can say, oh, well, we can barter the time. This is going to take me 15 hours to knit. So what I can do is it takes about an hour to do a load of laundry. So I will drop 15 loads of laundry off at your house so that when I'm spending my personal time knitting for you, you can be doing my clothes, washing and folding my laundry. That's a fairly even swap, except for the fact the skill level it takes to knit is a little bit higher than laundry, but laundry does take some skill. So you can try to work that. You know, during the whenever I'm knitting on your project, you need to be washing my dishes. You need to be folding my clothes. You need to paint the walls. And unfortunately, the response you'll frequently get to that is, well, you are just going to be knitting anyway because you like knitting. And the answer to that is, I like knitting for myself. When I am knitting for myself or knitting a project that I want to knit, regardless of who it's for, then I enjoy it. When I'm knitting a project someone else selected with yarn someone else selected, that's work. That's a job, and that needs to be compensated because no one is entitled to your time or your skills. And I'm just going to say that. Now, a third thing, it's a second money thing or a third thing you can look at. When I pay sample knitters, sometimes I don't have time to actually knit everything that I have to get knit. Sometimes I need a new sample and things like that. And when I pay sample knitters, and the industry standard is to pay per yard. So that's 15 to 20, maybe up to 25 cents a yard, depending on complexity, with 15 cents per yard being the low end. And I already did a little bit of math on this. So for a pair of socks, which to knit a pair of socks in fingering and weight yarn, it's going to take you about 400 yards. So 400 yards of fingering weight is going to cost anywhere between $60 at the low end and $80 just for the knitting. And again, on top of that, you need to charge for your materials. A adult sweater, a medium-sized adult sweater in worsted weight, I'm talking about for a woman most likely, it's going to take you about 1,400 yards of worsted weight. So at the low end of complexity, which we're just talking about a stockinette raglan sweater, you're looking at $210 in yardage. And at the higher end, you're looking at $280 just for the knitting. So if you want to throw out some of those numbers, so either estimating your charge per hour that is going to take you or per yard are both equally valid ways of doing it. Estimating per hour is more on the, I really don't want to do this and I want to scare you off kind of situation. So the numbers, because if you're looking at $8 an hour and it's going to take you 50 hours, that's a lot of money. But I personally like the laundry approach. So for every hour I spend knitting, you're going to spend it doing my laundry. And that usually gets people to back down. These arguments also work for the random person at work or on the bus who sees you knitting socks, who says, hey, those are great. They're really pretty. I bet you could sell those on Etsy. You could probably get 10 or 15 bucks for a pair of socks. Because those people mean well. And they're trying to compliment you, but they don't even realize that the yarn costs more than $10 or $15 if you're working with very nice yarn. So this is just saying no. It's okay to say no if it isn't what you want to do. Now, if it is what you want to do, if you do like knitting for other people, if you like knitting for charities, if you like knitting for your family, if you like knitting for friends, if you like knitting for like auction, whatever, that is wonderful. And good for you. If that's how you choose to spend your time, that is something that brings you joy, and that is awesome. But you knew there was a but coming. Sometimes it's difficult when the recipient of your knitting does not really understand or is not appreciative of the work and love and time you have put into what you have made them. There are definitely people who think that when you hand make a gift that you're doing it because you're cheap, because you didn't want to spend the money. And they don't. It goes back to what I was saying. It's not valuing the time spent and not understanding the amount of time that is spent in making these things. So when you're considering gifting something to someone, you might want to think about whether or not that person is what is known in the knitting circles as knitworthy. Are they knitworthy? Is it someone who is going to appreciate all the time and effort that went into this gift? Is it someone who is going to properly care for the item that you give them, or are they just going to throw it into the washing machine? Now, if they are going to appreciate it, but you're concerned about whether or not it's just going to go in the washing machine, that is something you can take into consideration and plan your project accordingly. Maybe you shouldn't do it with some really super fancy hand-dyed yarn. Maybe you should look into a superwash or even an acrylic yarn that would be more suited with their lifestyle, because it's not necessarily about carelessness and just about how their lifestyle is. But are they going to care for it? Are they even going to wear it? Does it fit with their overall style? Think about these things before you decide to spend all the time crafting a gift for someone. That said, again, it's about giving it to them. And if that's what it's about, you need to be able to let it go. And I'm not going to burst into song. You have to sort of divorce yourself from it, because the purpose of it was because you wanted to give them something from your heart that made them happy. And as long as they're happy with it, you just kind of need to. Now it's not yours anymore. It's a gift and it was theirs. And if they don't appreciate it, just make a mental note of that, and maybe they get moved from knitworthy to non-knitworthy. And if they're not going to appreciate it, just find another thoughtful gift that you can just purchase and give to them, and it will probably save you both time and money. And so I wanted to talk about this because I know it is something that a lot of knitters and crafters struggle with, because if you aren't a knitter or a crafter, it's really hard to understand how much time and effort goes into these things and how much it means if you are gifted something that has been handmade or hand knit. I mean, a hand knit sweater takes a long, long time, but our society has sort of turned it into a running gag. If you think about, oh, look at this horrible sweater my grandma knit me. It's kind of a running joke. So make sure the person that you're considering knitting it for will understand and value what it is as a gift, or just accept that the reason you're knitting it is because it's something that you want them to have, and they may or may not really understand what goes into it, but have joy in the fact that you were able to give them something that you hoped that they would like, I guess. I don't know. It's just, you gotta let go. You gotta not be so attached to it. I've heard stories that make me incredibly sad about people who have crafted something for someone, knit a sweater for someone, knit a shawl for someone, and then later found that exact piece in their local thrift shop, that they just gave it away. So that person they're not knit-worthy. They obviously did not value what you gave them. Just save yourself the time and knit something for yourself. Back to earlier discussion about saying no. This was just my little thing. This discussion came up in the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, and I decided I wanted to talk about it because the very first, saying no. No is fine. You can say no. You don't owe anybody your crafting time. If you choose to give it to them, then you need to realize that it is a gift that you are giving to them and treat it accordingly, understanding that once that thing has left your hands, just let it go and be happy that it's done. The other thing, if you're gonna consider doing the whole, yes, I'll knit this for you, but you have to pay for the yarn and you have to pay for my time, get a deposit. Get a deposit that at least covers the cost of materials, or have them purchase it and give it to you, but be very strict about what they're purchasing, because what's going to happen if they really don't know anything about it is you're going to agree to make this sweater and they're going to show up with some yarn that you may or may not want to necessarily knit with, depending on, because they're like, I got this super cheap on sale at Tuesday morning and it's the wrong weight. They don't understand any of that. So you need to have the money up front, at least half of it, a deposit, and then don't give it to them until they pay. Because I've definitely also run into people who have not gotten compensated as agreed upon. Maybe even consider getting it in writing, at least via email or text, something that you can then, prove what y'all's agreement was. Personally, I don't knit for friends unless it is just a gift of my heart. I know that some people do knit for money or crochet for money, and that is fantastic. That is wonderful. Just make sure to get what you're worth. Don't undersell yourself, because you have a skill and you have an ability, and the person who's buying it doesn't have that skill or ability, or they'd be doing it themselves. So don't undervalue yourself. Don't undervalue the work of your hands, and take joy in gifting it if that's what you want to do. So that is what I have to say about knitting for other people for at least, the next 15 minutes. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.